Season 5 wasn't nice to us, going 5-11, underperforming our expected record, which means next season we may improve. We're going to have to, considering the owner isn't too happy with how the teams performed this season. With the power ranking of 28 and the 4th overall pick in the draft, we're going to have to make moves this offseason. Let's get Season 6 underway. There was only one retirement, Derek Pope. On paper, he looks not good, but he was sitting as a third stringer for his entire career. All he managed to do was get 14 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and an interception. Not bad for a 7th round pick. But I mean, I had to offer him a contract. He really didn't want to come back though. So say goodbye to the heart of this team, Derek Pope. Other retirements, Nate Wayne, Mr. Monday Night, Michael Strahan. I don't know why he doesn't have any stats, but it must be a glitch. He's a Hall of Famer, class of 2014. He also has the NFL sack record, but that's debatable.
Against Brett Favre, week 17.
Play fake, rolls right, gets sacked by Michael Strahan. And Favre ran right into him. It almost looked like it was a design play.
Will Allen was a guy I wanted to trade for back in Season 2, but I didn't have the money to get him. Imagine how good our defense would have been in 2007. Sean Springs finishes his career in New York, but in reality retired in 2009 as a New England Patriot. Kevin Maue retired as a Jet, but did so as a tight end in real life. He's also in the Hall of Fame, class of 2019. If you haven't already seen this guy's highlight reel, go check it out. Dre Bly is a fun dude to watch. I think Thomas Jones is a very underrated running back. He's also a fabulous actor. He comes out in Luke Cage. The Dolphins traded a 3rd round pick for this guy when Ricky Williams retired in 2004. This was a dumb move even then. Ryan Longwell might be the reason the Vikings had Brett Favre at the end of his career. You Viking fans should be thanking him. This guy was a former Dolphin in real life. I remember using him in Madden NFL 06. I wonder if I should do a franchise of that game. I still have my original Xbox. Sometimes we forget how hard the NFL is on players. Short only lasted 7 seasons in the NFL. This was during a time where you could hit. I didn't know Rick Meyer was in this game. I remember him as one of the record holders in NFL Quarterback Club 2002. I think this one glitched out too. Brad Johnson was not a spectacular quarterback, but he had some pretty good seasons. He won a Super Bowl with Tampa. As a Dolphin fan who had to watch Kevin Falk play, all I have to say, out of respect, 4th and 2.
That's where Scott Green marks it. Doesn't have it, doesn't have it. Now has it.
This will be a decision they discussed for a long time.
We have another Hall of Famer, class of 2019, Ty Law. He retired in 2009 with the Denver Broncos. I honestly had no idea. Back in Season 3, I had the chance to re-sign Freeman, but moved on from him. The originals on this team will all retire before I get to the playoffs again. Jeff Wilkins' nickname was Money. I can tell you right now, he made a lot of money in 14 years. Is this our 3rd Hall of Famer, class of 2016? I never knew he finished his career in Chicago. Going to be honest, I have no clue who this guy is, but apparently he almost fought Clinton Portis for the number 26. Morlon Greenwood is a series original. We decided to let him go back in Season 4. Greg Spires retired with the Steelers. He earned a ring with the Buccaneers in Super Bowl 37, along with Brad Johnson. Another Hall of Famer, Larry Allen, is in the class of 2013. I think it's interesting he finished his career with Houston, in this game at least, since he started with Dallas. He last played with the 49ers in real life. If you're a Chargers fan, you know exactly who this guy is, but if you can't remember, let me remind you. Corey Chavez retired. I'm sure Vikings fans have fond memories of him. Rams, probably not so much. I'm a longtime Dolphin fan, and I had no idea this guy was signed with them back in 2008. He played only 1 game. Another Hall of Famer of the class of 2013, seeing a lot of retirements from that Super Bowl Buccaneers team. Sapp actually lasted longer in this game by a season, but just retired on the wrong team. This is the Hall of Fame of retirement seasons. Brian Dawkins retired, who's in the class of 2018. He left Philly in this game for Chicago. I think orange suited him much better in the end of his career. He's not the only former Philly player in Chicago. Terrell Owens is hanging it up. He's also in the Hall of Fame Game, same class as Dawkins, 2018. Is Owens officially retired yet? Damn it, Owens, just stop. Would you look at that, another Hall of Famer, class of 2019.
Arturo Gonzalez, University of California. Okay?
Kim Herring lasted a lot longer here than in the actual NFL. He was on that Baltimore squad that won the Super Bowl and lost the following year with the Rams. If you're a Bengals fan, then you probably have this guy as one of your best players in your franchise. His only blemish is finishing his career with the Ravens. I had no idea this guy was on the Ravens Super Bowl team and played for the Giants. I mostly remember him from his career on the Colts. Oh yeah, and this.
Coulter right next to him. Orton bumps again to the sideline. Batted up. Oh God! Stokely down the sideline. Can they catch him? Stokely! Wow! Touchdown! Denver! Unbelievable!
We're now getting deep into the series. This is the first player from Season 2 retiring. I remember Corey Bradford when I would play NFL 2K3. I wonder if I should do a series on that one. Charles Lee actually has a ring with this team from their Super Bowl win in 2004. He did nothing. Freddie Jones retired in 2005. His video game counterpart, though, had a lot left in the tank. I remember LJ Shelton. He was on that 1-15 Miami Dolphins team. There's a lot of players from that Buccaneers team that's retiring. Dexter Jackson was the MVP of that game. Tim Dwight is mainly remembered for his kick return in the Super Bowl against Denver.
Together. Here comes Tim Dwight again. Yeah, he's got some room to go. And they're not going to catch him. Tim Dwight gone. Backs it in, and Atlanta finally scores a touchdown.
You didn't think the Hall of Famers were done on this list, did you? He is from the class of 2012. This game is stacked with a bunch of legends. Who else remembers this guy from the Rooster Teeth ad they did for Madden?
Oh! He cloned himself so he could be tackled for once.
That's how good he is. He had the foresight to know to stop himself.
Clark. Yeah.
And you face everyone else.
The final retirement is Tarek Glenn. He won the Super Bowl with the Colts back in 2007. I do want to point out really quick, Brett Favre is going into his 19th season. Is he the next Jerry Rice?
I will never retire!
After the retirements, I went back to look at the draft positions. We moved up from the 4th to the 3rd. I don't know how, but I'm not gonna complain. Now that that's over, re-signing is our next task, and the owner is letting us know he wants us to re-sign Sandoval. Sandoval isn't the only player who needs a new contract. We have a few supporting players that need one, along with big names like Chris Chambers. If you haven't noticed, we have more than enough to re-sign players. Our cap room is actually more than what we've spent on the team. We're going to work our way to the top, starting with Rex Hadnot. He's an original. We don't have many of those on this team, but he never improved. He's not very useful to us as depth either. He won't be returning to this team. Sammy Morris is the next guy on the list. We already have Aguilar at fullback. He played 4 games last season. He's also an original on this team, but he's getting up there in age. It's time to move on from him. Carl Hudson is another backup on this team looking for a new contract. He was drafted in Season 2 in the 7th round. He's come a long way. His biggest moment was in the playoff game against the Colts where he picked off Peyton Manning. How do you not resign a guy who picked off Peyton Manning? We traded for Vonnie Holiday in year 2. I actually like this guy as a backup, but I think it's time to move on from him. One of our weakest positions is cornerback. Luther Hammond is in need of a new contract, and believe it or not, he's one of the better players. He was a 2nd round pick in year 3 of this rebuild. He had a good rookie season, but just hasn't done much since. I ended up giving him a new contract because he has to be good, right? Now we're going to the meat and potatoes of the resignings. John Kitna was traded for way back in year 1. I think he's done well with the team, but his better years are behind him. He peaked back in year 2. We don't have a lot of depth behind Chris Chambers, who was one of the first big re-signings back in year 2. He finished the season on an injury, which could mean his skills may drop drastically next season. He might decide to retire soon. I did look into an offer I could definitely afford to give to him, but decided to let him walk. Stefan Sandoval is the guy management wanted me to re-sign. I don't blame him. This guy has come a long way since being selected in the 2nd round in year 2. I gave him a very bonus heavy contract. There's no way we ever consider letting him go. Plus it saves us about $1 million to do so. Say goodbye to Rex Hadnot, Sammy Morris, Vonnie Holiday, John Kitna, and Chris Chambers. It's an end of an era now. They'll all hit free agency, which will be headlined this year with Peterson, Chambers, Walton, and Little. Free agency seems to always be a bust in this game, even so we needed a kicker. Cundiff and Brown are the best available. Billy Cundiff seems to not have played in the last 4 seasons, and Josh Brown had himself a pretty darn good season last year. This was an easy choice. I offered Brown what he wanted, but I eventually lowered the years on the contract. I didn't want to commit long term. He felt the same way and agreed. The biggest name in the free agency, Peterson signed a 5-year deal with Chicago. He wasn't the only new player joining the Bears. Chris Chambers signed a 4-year deal with them. I also looked up John Kitna, $5 million for 1 year on the Vikings team. The draft is right around the corner. I just wanted to show the mock draft once again. 2 running backs are predicted to go first. Both those teams selected those players in the draft, which means it's only right I select Danny Daniels with the 3rd pick. This quarterback is so nice, they named him twice. Danny Daniels is no doubt going to be a starter going into the season. Of course, Double D is going to need some weapons. Calvin Russell was our first 2nd round pick. He's a very well-rounded weapon. I think in a few seasons he becomes a huge threat. We lost Pope in the offseason. I see it's only fitting we get a new one. Eddie Pope was accidentally drafted because I thought he was a free safety. He was not. I'm sure we can still use him though. If this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, then you should know I always draft a cornerback. Lonnie Bowers was our 3rd round pick. Here's hoping this one pans out. At this point we're drafting best player available or for depth reasons. Jerome Sutton was drafted to replace Rex Hadnot as depth. Injuries happen a lot in this game. It's best to be ready for it. Our 5th round pick was Dallas Tate. Sammy Morris is no longer on the team. I figured it's time to replace him, right? In our final pick, we didn't have a 6th rounder, Oscar Kennedy. He's a guy. We are in the beginning of a rebuild, a new one, which is funny because when we first started, I tried to put band-aids on this team. Now we truly are in a full-blown rebuild. Last season, we finished 5-11. This season, we'll try and top that. It's a good start knowing we have no injuries going into the new season. Do we have any elite players? Danielle Turner is our highest rated player. He's barely going into his 3rd season, which means we can build around him. Irvin Lindsay is our 2nd elite player. He blew up last season, getting 7 interceptions. He's also one of my first draft picks. The secondary is looking scary. Let's look at the rest of the roster. Rodolfo Porter, the 7th round pick from a few seasons ago, is rated higher than Danny D, the number 3 overall pick from this last draft. There's no reason not to go ahead with Double D. Porter will be the backup, and we don't like to talk about Sutton. We're going to find a replacement for Ricky Williams eventually. This may be his final season. Michael Turner will continue to be his backup. Roosevelt Aguilar is on the final year of his contract, but with how well Tate is right now, Aguilar is going to have to work hard to show he's worth a new contract. My favorite position on the team, wide receiver. I think there's a lot of potential here. The problem is that it's just potential. Funny enough, we drafted Calvin Russell this year in the 2nd round. If he and Wesley Klein work out, the receiving duo would really be the Calvin and Klein. That was not planned out. Now we're starting to see the decline of Randy McMichael. I don't know if we'll keep him next season, but we'll do something fast. Parsons doesn't seem to be his replacement. Ryan started the fire last season and now it's burning and the world is turning. He's not giving up his spot to Curry. We may have found our long-term guy. Now, of course, we signed Sandoval to a large contract this offseason, but he's been a huge part of this team's rebuild. Our younger guys developing is the reason we have so much cap space right now. We're going to have to pay them soon. Wade Smith has been such a surprise on this team. I think he's the highest rated tackle we've ever had. Herrera is learning, but slowly. In 2 years' time, we will have a tough decision to make. We move over to the defensive side of things. Phil Hardyboy and Bradley the Manly Sparks are the anchor on this defensive line. You can see our young guys are beginning to lead this team. At defensive end, we have our undrafted duos, Joseph and Higgins, who both signed on this team as undrafted players. They weren't cheap. They're not going to be cheap later either. Our outside linebackers have been really good too. Bob Parsons has the respect of the entire locker room, and Walters has been developing really well. This team is coming along very nicely. Remember when Zach Thomas retired, I thought it would take forever to replace him. Matthew Richards is changing my mind. He's barely into his 2nd year, but he's looking fierce. We have a lot of depth at cornerback, which is good and bad. Good because if an injury happens, we have a backup. Bad because most of them aren't very good. I remember signing Asante Samuel back in season 1. He's regressed since then. I figured it was time to move on. We now have a lot of depth at strong safety due to Pope. It might be a good thing since Gardner might want a lot of money next season to sit the bench. The biggest surprise was Edmund King and his rating boost. He's also on the final year of his contract. This next offseason is going to be expensive. Josh Brown will be taking over as the kicker. That was decided the minute he accepted our contract. With that being said, goodbye Williamson. And of course, Jenkins has been more than good enough for this team. Let's start the 2009 season with an away game against the Cleveland Browns. First game of the year would be a loss. These are two completely different teams when they've met in the playoffs a few years ago. Double D had a good start to his career with Williams taking some of the pressure off of him. The defense was non-existent though, with Lindsey being their best player. The Dolphins would face another AFC North team in the Bengals, losing by 4 points. That's back-to-back games where the defense hasn't helped out their young rookie. Double D did his best to win this game for the Dolphins, but just came up short. They would stay home following the loss to host the Jets, but would also lose this one in a close one. Caldwell's kick return for a touchdown would cost the Dolphins this win. Double D had his third straight game where he performed well too. Walters also did his best to help out, forcing a turnover and getting a sack. We are getting our first injuries on the season. Henry Jimenez is out for 2 weeks, while Ryan will be out for a week. There's one more game before the bye week, away at New England, and the Dolphins lost in another shootout. They made national news against the Patriots. All season long, they've showed their defense is as good as an umbrella with holes in a monsoon. Today didn't change. Not many rookies will win in a shootout with Tom Brady. Not many teams make the playoffs after an 0-4 start. The Dolphins season looked like it's over already. Or is it? Phil Hardy boy made his name felt in this game with 3 sacks on the Bills quarterback, Matt Hasselbeck. They got their first win on the year and against a division rival. Now they take on the red hot Titans team and they got obliterated. Double D had his worst game with the team so far and probably had something to do with them losing. Their offense couldn't get going, and even with Bradley the Manly doing his best to get after Roethlisberger, they didn't stand a chance. This may have been a reason for the score being the way it is. Daniel Turner has a stress fracture on his foot. He'll miss 6 games this season, meaning he won't be able to play against the Broncos, losing another close game. Double D had himself another terrible game this week. Their pass defense was already bad. This week it was more of the same. Walters did his best on the team, but wasn't enough. Injuries are becoming a problem as Phil Hardy boy is on the injured list with elbow tendonitis. Last week the defense managed to keep the game low scoring, and they did it again this week. Problem is the offense can't do anything. Double D played better today, but it didn't help as the running game couldn't get going, and they're still getting torched in the air. It doesn't help that the defense is completely falling apart, metaphorically and literally. Hammond is out for the rest of the year, and Walters could potentially play injured by the end of the season. We had to put Hammond on the IR after his torn MCL. With all these injuries, it'll be hard to even get a win at this rate. Of course we win. Chambers couldn't get his revenge on us. Culpepper is now on the Bears, and he lit up the Dolphins. Problem is, the Dirty D decided to play today. Doesn't hurt that Rick and Williams also played well, along with Joseph's 3 sacks. The team played as well as you could have asked for. 38 points last week. Daniels is getting momentum. They still have a very good Ricky Williams, but New England doesn't care. Double D came back to reality. Williams is beginning to slow down. It doesn't help that New England still has Tom Brady. Bob Parsons even did his best to help. This team is very inconsistent at this point. They have another division game, this time against the Bills. They beat them earlier this season, wasn't happening twice this year. They played well, but this defense, for as hyped as they were at the beginning of the year, isn't doing its part. This is their 6th loss by a touchdown or less. They have their final division game of the year against the Jets, and they'll also have their 3rd straight loss. The Dolphins deserved a win this week. They played really well, but again, it all comes down to Double D. If he can't get into the end zone, he won't be in the NFL long. The Dolphins season has been a disappointment so far, but they can at least try and get a good spot for next year's draft. The Dirty D showed up against Baltimore, and I can't say I hate it. I don't like Baltimore. I just figured you're not going to make the playoffs. What are you playing for? Pride? The following week is another AFC North game where they beat up the Steelers. I I hate the Steelers too, but guys, come on, we're trying to get the best position in the draft here. You can't keep winning. I got frustrated and forgot to see the highlights. There's only 2 games left. They stay home to play against the Vikings, and well, they beat them too. Didn't even look like they played well. The Vikings outsucked the Dolphins. It's the final game of the year. We can tie our worst season here and get a good draft.
Why are you the way that you are?
I honestly don't get it. All year long we couldn't win, then suddenly the D got dirty and pulled off wins. Finished the year at 6-10, still last in the division, but it's considerably weaker than in the previous seasons. Now, before we see our players' stats, let's go over the yearly awards. Eli Manning won it this year. He had a great season, no longer just the younger brother of Peyton Manning. We can only hope Double D turns out as well as him. Michael Vick won the Offensive Player of the Year. He won MVP last year. He basically gets the runner-up award. Been really phenomenal these past 2 seasons. He kicked it into another gear. Ed Reed won Defensive Player of the Year. The numbers these players get on defense is insane. I'm not saying Ed Reed couldn't do this in real life, because he could, but those interceptions are like crazy. Dirty Dan won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Danny Daniels, with the most controversial name, is living up to the hype. Sometimes. We have the bar, now we must go beyond. The Defensive Rookie of the Year is Pete Dean. He knows how to tackle, he also knows how to get after the quarterback. The Dirty Birds have themselves a centerpiece of the defense for the next decade. The final award, rushing title, goes to Deuce McAllister. Back-to-back seasons with the award. Last time that happened with Ricky Williams. His seasons were way better than McAllister's. Danny Daniels did very well for a rookie. He may be as slow as a snail in peanut butter, but he sure does have an arm. That's why this offensive line will be important to his development. I expect next season to be even better. This year was interesting because Ricky Williams didn't carry the ball much. He still carried the ball a lot, and he just didn't carry the team as much as he did back in that 2007 campaign. As much as I like Michael Turner, I think it may be time to look for a better backup. We know what he brings to the team, and these past 2 seasons he's been pretty good. We only have 2 running backs, and I want to be prepared for injuries. The question after this year is for Aguilar is he worth a new contract? He's been very consistent, but he hasn't been as good as that 2007 season. He's a good receiving back, but he's gotten worse each season. Levi Pittman, Mr. Hands of Stones, proved in the right system he could be a good deep threat. He had his best average this season in his career, most touchdowns. Has he found a home in Miami? Wesley Calvin Klein led the team in touchdowns this season. He had a pretty decent year considering a rookie was starting. He has all the tools to be a star player. Calvin Russell had a very identical season to Wesley Klein. He finished the year with an injury, but I wouldn't expect it to set him back. He's got all the tools like Klein to be a superstar. Randy McMichael had a down season compared to his previous years. Considering he's getting up there in age, it may be time to move on from him. Henry Jimenez has yet to finish the full season with this team. He had all the playing time and still couldn't get career highs. J.R. Tolver only played in 3 games, and he did as well as Jimenez. He may have regressed, but he still has some juice left. If this is Matthew Richards' floor, I'm okay with that. He's a liability in coverage, but he can stuff the run as good as anyone else. Heck, maybe even better. This is his first year as an elite player, and Irvin Lindsay came back to reality, which is fine. When he's on, he's really good, and when he's not, he's still pretty good. Bob Parsons is my favorite player on this team. He had his fewest tackles this year, but made up for it in sacks and interceptions. The sophomore slump is no more for Ellis Joseph. He came back this season with 11.5 sacks. He's going to make us broke someday. Edmund King is on a contract year. Edmund King had no interceptions prior to this season. Edmund King had 4 this season. Why couldn't he do this throughout all his career? Not just on contract years. Phil Walters was having a career year before his injury midway through the season. He might have led this team in sacks. Well, we'll see if he can keep it up next season. Phil Hardy Boy had a good season. He's finding his footing in the NFL. His specialty is getting after the quarterback, and he's doing just that. I think we know what Bradley the Manly can do. He's not a star player, but he's still pretty good. Carl Hudson is the new Derek Pope. All he did was make plays. 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception. We just found our new heartbeat. Danielle Turner missed 6 games this year. Still managed to get 3 interceptions. If he can just play an entire season, I think we could finish with a winning record. Injuries forced Chris Norton's security system out on the field. He had 2 interceptions, but nothing more. He's a good nickel guy, not a boundary guy. Finding a good kicker is really hard to get. Josh Brown had a terrible season after having such a good one last year. I have him for another season, so I'm going to hold out hope. Lastly, Terrence Jenkins has been booming punts this season. He's been really good on this team. Let's see who makes the Super Bowl this season. The Chargers shock everyone, no pun intended, while Philadelphia is the only wild card team moving on to the next round. The Colts would stomp on any chance for another 8-8 team making the Super Bowl, while the Bengals look dominant. Both NFC teams that earned a bye week got eliminated. Everyone got blown out this week. Colts go toe-to-toe with the Bengals and come out on top. And while the Eagles take on the Bears, Marty Booker versus Chris Chambers, Booker comes out on top. And your 2009-2010 Super Bowl champions are the Indianapolis Colts. They went to the Super Bowl in year 2, 4, and now 6, winning 2 in 5 years. Now, before we end it, I found out John Kitna was on the Eagles team. He tried to get a ring, but it didn't work out. Marty Booker got injured in the beginning of the season. His cap hit this year was $12.5 million. He got paid $2 million per catch this season. The Eagles team should be called the Philadelphia Dolphins for all their former players on their team. Agunlaye has been consistent since leaving Miami. Another former Dolphin, Jason Taylor, showing his regression. Before I finish the video off, Ricky Williams made the Pro Bowl, our only player to make it, and as it looks right now, we're 7th in the draft. Barring any luck, we can get anywhere between 4th and 7th in this coming draft. That'll be it for the video. Let's see how season 7 goes. Hopefully better.